Welcome back to the Small College Basketball Podcast. My name is Chris Cottrell, and with more than 10 years of small college basketball coaching experience and entering our third season of full coverage here on the Small College Basketball Podcast, this is the only podcast with interviews, news, and highlights that celebrates the incredible coaches, players, and programs across all of small college basketball, celebrating NCAA Division II, NCAA Division III, the NAIA, the NCCAA, and the USCAA. Small College Basketball would like to thank Visit Central Florida for their support of the podcast and the Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic. Start planning your Central Florida vacation now at visitcentralflorida.com. That's visitcentralflorida.com. Welcome back to the Small College Basketball Podcast. My name is Chris Cottrell. Once again, celebrating the players, coaches, programs, and the history of small college basketball. Real quick, we do need to thank our primary sponsor, Visit Central Florida, for their support of small college basketball, the Small College Basketball Podcast, and the upcoming Small College Basketball Hall of Fame Classic. Start planning your Central Florida vacation now at visitcentralflorida.com. Joined today by Coach John Kirkorian from Christopher Newport University, 2023 NCAA Division III national champions. We're going to roll through 5-6 questions in about 15 or 20 minutes, Coach. But first, thanks for joining us. This is going to be a blast.
Chris, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on. You guys and John and small college basketball. I know how much passion you have for the game. At a great level, and I'm so appreciative to be part of it.
Well, thanks for being here. I think when you mentioned passion, what we're all passionate about, I think, is first and foremost the relationships and that we've all been able to form. And you and I have a common bond through Dom Parker. Dom the Bomb. I coached Dom when I first started coaching at Lincoln Memorial. He was a terrific kid. Back then as a player. How was he as an assistant? He returned, I think, to the chair for this upcoming season, correct?
He did. That's great. I didn't realize the connection. Dominic is, I'm telling you, you talk about a salt of the earth human being. To put up with me on a second stint and to come back willingly, I mean, that tells you volumes about the kind of character he has. What you mentioned the word relationships. And that's what Dom Parker does best. His ability to connect with players, recruits, parents, administrators is second to none. And he is picked up right where he left off. And we are thrilled to have him back on our bench.
I don't know the last time that he and I spoke, but I shot him a text today and just said, "Hey, I'm having Coach on tonight. Hope all is well." And he wrote right back, "Man, Coach, things are great. You're going to have a great time tonight." So really, really exciting to have that connection. But going on year 13 at Christopher Newport, and this year's a little bit different, reigning national champions. So what's changed for you so far in the offseason? College basketball is an ebb and flow type of thing, NIL, transfer portal. What's going on at Christopher Newport right now?
I never have got caught up too much in any of this stuff, and it was really exciting to be able to cut down the nets in Fort Wayne, and I would never take anything away from that. We'll have that. That team last year and those players and coaches will have that forever, but it really represented the work of so many people on our campus, in our community, our alumni, people that have worn our jersey for the last 50 years. And they're still part of now what we do moving forward in 23, 24. I don't think the game plan is going to be any different than it's been for the last 13 years. And, we're going to try to put a group together that is as tough as it possibly can be on the defensive end of the floor. We're going to compete every night, be as prepared as we possibly can to put our kids in a situation to be successful. And we're going to try to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and for those listeners who aren't familiar with how last season ended, you finished 30-3. win the national championship game at the buzzer over Mount Union. And to set the scene, Mount Union scores. Christian Parker gets a bucket in the paint with 4 seconds to go, give or take. And immediately your team inbounds the ball. Trey Barber gets into the paint, kind of makes a pull up at the buzzer. The game was back and forth. Take us through the final seconds, the last few possessions, in your mind's eye, how you're seeing it play out.
Yeah, it was, that game was pretty typical of our season and our team, and it really was the epitome of it. And so it was kind of fitting how it ended. We lived on the edge all year. We had close game after close game in the tournament. We were pretty well versed in those moments. We lost a few early, and we won a few in the tournament. We got out to a terrible start offensively. Mount Union really came out and pushed us around. We were down 14 in the first half, and but as we did all year, we kind of battled defensively and hung in there. Our guys played with great swagger. We brought some kids off the bench that thought could give us a lift, and they got us back in the game. And before you know it, it's a 3-point game at halftime. And kind of true to form, our guys found their mojo and really took off in the second half. And we really took control of the game. I forget if it was 7, 8, or 9 points there with just a couple minutes to go. But that wasn't our team. Our team played fast and furious when we were down, and fast and loose when we were ahead. And that's kind of what we did. And credit obviously to Mount Union. They fought back from that deficit and cut that thing all the way and took the lead. I think the play that sticks out to me is when we actually lost the lead. We had turned the ball over a couple of times after having that lead, and I think everyone in the gym thought we were going to call a timeout, and we didn't. And Ty Henderson, my starting point guard, took the ball coast to coast and got an and one, which put us up 2. We were down 1. We had lost the lead, and things weren't looking so great. And this was, right before Parker scored. And so we were able to get an and one by our point guard in the paint. And then Mount Union called a timeout, came down. We were up 2. They executed a terrific pick and roll, and Parker finished it to tie the game with 4.5 seconds to go. I had taken out Ty Henderson, who had scored that and one bucket. I took him out defensively just for size reasons. Mount Union was so big. We thought having the ability to switch on the perimeter with some bigger perimeter players, something we had done quite a few times, would be our best bet. It was fine. We didn't get the stop, but it was a tie game. But our point guard wasn't on the floor. And so it was a little unique for us, but it's just our philosophy. We work on it every day. Is we're not going to take a timeout to let the defense A, get their matchups, B, get set, C, get back. We're going to go and see if we can get to the paint and create an advantage, which in our philosophy is far better than any kind of play that I could draw up. So didn't think we'd throw it to our 6'8" center just before half court, but he was open. He's a terrific player. He really is. There's not a doubt in my mind he can drive it coast to coast. He does it. We do drills like that every day, and he took it confidently to the basket. And my staff and I were just watching, going, well, we can't draw anything up better than this guy who's already got 24 points or whatever it was, going downhill against, they're all American, and this is going to be fun. Let's see what happens. Worst case, we go to overtime. And, Trey stepped up and made a terrific shot at the buzzer, and man, just an epic finish.
Epic finish. What was the emotion like for you? I mean, you're going through the scenarios in your mind, take a timeout, not to take a timeout. What's the last play going to look like? We're playing into overtime. And then the ball goes through. Did it take you a moment to kind of take it all in?
Yeah, well, and I'm not a big celebrate guy anyway, so I kind of, there's definitely a little bit of a sense of relief because, I mean, honestly, I was just in that moment so fully that all I was thinking about is like, here we are, we had this lead, we blew the lead, we hit the N1. I was still kind of, for lack of a better term, I was a little pissed off at the way we defended the pick and roll for them to tie the game. Um, and I'm thinking like, God, and Trey comes down the floor and makes the shot, and I just it was some relief, like we might have just pulled this thing off. But then before we could really, then the referees had to stop and replay it to be sure. And then all the doubt creeps in. I'm trying to, now get my guys who are running around the court celebrating back over to the bench in case we got to go to overtime or something.
Right.
So I'm trying to look onto the screen and talk to Sarah Kotraki, who's got the thing in her hand to see if she, saw the video. And that was an eternity. It probably took 15 seconds. It felt like 2 hours for them to review the play. And I will say I knew when the official walked away from the monitor by his body language, I just knew he was going to say it went in because he was dancing over there. And so, at that point I knew it was good, and really more relief than anything, and joy for my players because, their faces and their body language was like, it's just something and honestly, at the same time, it's an incredible gut-wrenching feeling for those guys on the other side because that could have just as easily been us. And I knew some of their players and had competed against some and prior, and we had so much respect for those guys. It's just to see them breaking down in tears, and I mean, it's an emotional deal when you get to that stage.
You get to that stage, it's all emotion. I mean, it really is your habits, and then whatever emotion lifts you up into the moment, I think is so critical. You mentioned Trey Barber, All-American last season. He'll be back this year. You also return All-American John Hines. Talk about those two guys coming back, and then what else is Christopher Newport looking like on the depth chart?
Yeah, on paper, we lose a starter in Matt Brody,
Mhm.
who didn't get the accolades of those guys, but arguably was the All-American. I mean, he did it all, and even in that pivotal game there, I mean, he made big shots. He always drew the assignment of defending the other team's best player, made plays, finished at the basket, made free throws. We're going to miss Matt Brody quite a bit. Rodney Graves was a fifth-year guy that came in and really helped us. And in that tournament, he really helped us. And he has graduated and moved on. So those are two really good-sized wing players that are gone that had a lot of experience. But, Trey Barber is back, healthy, looks good. John Hines. These guys have done it consistently in terms of scoring and rebounding the basketball. Ty Henderson, who I talked about making that big N1, he's back. His brother has joined us as a freshman. Colin Hines, who's John Hines' brother, is back. And I think he's arguably the best defensive player in the country on the wing. As a freshman last year, he guarded all those guys in the tournament. He's come a long way. So we're excited about those returning starters, and there's some guys that played a role last year that we're hopeful can play a bigger role. Ian Anderson, Jake Latta, Caleb Furr are guys that all played. Caleb had a terrific championship game, and we're hopeful that these guys can step up. And then we got a whole bunch of young freshmen that are excited to play, that are bringing a lot of energy and practice that I think is really needed because these old guys, they're like 23 years old with that COVID thing. Like they're old, man. Like they can't get through these practices. I need some young guys with me, and I'm glad I got a nice freshman class because these guys are excited to be there, and and their eyes are wide open, and they're learning every day. And we're going to have some freshmen that people aren't talking about right now that are gonna play for the captains this year.
Good. We're looking forward to seeing those freshmen. Quick follow up: doing most of your work with high school recruits or taking some out of the portal? Have you been able to balance it? What's been the philosophy the last year or so?
So coming out of COVID, we really felt we needed to infuse the roster with some transfers, and we did, and so you look at Trey Barber, Ty Henderson, Rodney Graves, Matt Brody, Caleb Furr, 5 guys that were all transfers that played a lot for us. This year, with so much back, we didn't take any transfers. Transfers expect to play, and we just didn't feel like we had really an opportunity to give them. And so we brought in some freshmen who I think can learn, contribute. And I think with the portal, it opened up some really talented freshmen who were overlooked maybe by some Division I schools. So we felt we got a really strong freshman class that will, be in there with these guys and then be ready to step in when they graduate.
And you're talking about players stepping in. You've got 2 really challenging games out of the gate: Hampden-Sydney, and then the always really good Randolph-Macon. What are the expectations like early on? Coming off a national championship, heading into 2 really, really tough games to start the year. Where's your mind at? Leading this group, a lot of veterans, a lot of maturity, but also a lot of young guys.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is I'd like to find out if there's any issues, if we're going to have any kind of hangover, if things aren't going to gel. I'd like to know that in November, not January or February.
Yeah.
So, you know what? We went out and put Hampden-Sydney on there first game. They can't wait to get a piece of us at their place. All right, and then we head to Marietta's tournament. We got Kenyon and then Marietta. It's a classic. So all we can get there. We got Randolph-Macon back here and then Johns Hopkins. So, I mean, we're going to, I think, find out a lot about ourselves and see where we're at, what our holes are. Maybe we'll get beat. Maybe we'll win. I have no idea, but we've never shied away, and we've always wanted to play the best. And I know these teams really are gunning for us. And so we're going to find out a lot about ourselves, and hopefully that'll position us for, what direction we take it from there.
All right. Well, last question, Coach. And once again, thank you so much for your time. John McCarthy and I are so appreciative. Talk for a minute about the experience you had bringing your team to the White House. You got to visit the White House after your national championship. Talk about some of the moments you got to share with your players at the White House. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's you never prepare for winning the national championship. You don't know, right? You just try to win that game. You try to get to that game, and then you try to win that game, and you have no idea what's going to happen after that. And I would tell you, it superseded my expectations. Prior to that, we were invited to the governor's mansion here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin, who played Division I college basketball at Rice. So, really was invested in our team and spent personally over an hour with us and his wife at the mansion. That was incredible. He sat and spent time and talked with our players one-on-one for quite a long time. That was incredibly impactful. Then a few weeks later, we get invited to the White House with all the other champions from all the different levels and sports. And that was, it's a once in a lifetime deal, and it was really just cool to take all those pictures on the lawn and be there and know that, hey, we're part of a pretty elite group here. And it's just memories that these guys are going to have for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's awesome. Terrific season last year. Looking forward to keeping track of you this season coming up. Certainly appreciative of your time, and thanks for being a part of the Small College Basketball Podcast.
Thanks so much, Chris, and give John our best. We appreciate all that you guys do for this game. It's so meaningful. I just was speaking to somebody the other day about the purity of small college basketball, especially in the current landscape. There's no place I'd rather be, and it's awesome. And to have people like you that care and are covering it and giving these kids the platform they deserve, really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that, Coach. Thanks for the kind words. And if he's not careful, we'll get Don Parker on here soon too.
There you go. He'd be better than me. That's for sure. Get him on.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Chris.